Thank you to Ms. King and the African Drumming Group for opening our program. My name is Erica Lachard, and now I'd like to introduce Ms. Walters to share a few words about our program today.
Good morning. Monday, January 16th was a federal holiday to mark the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is also known as a day of service when we are empowered to strengthen our communities, bridge barriers, and create solutions to social problems, all of which moves us closer to Dr. King's vision of a beloved community. Dr. King believed in a nation of freedom and justice for all and encouraged all citizens to live up to the purpose and potential of America by applying the principles of nonviolence to make this country a better place to live, creating the beloved community. This week, West Rock's community came together to commemorate Dr. King's legacy and his work during the civil rights movement. We open our tribute with a few words from his daughter, Bernice King, about what you can do to ensure that his legacy lives on.
Greetings, I'm Bernice King, CEO of the King Center. My father, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was a global thought leader. He was a dreamer and a philosopher. Many have quoted him using his words to support their movements and agendas. However, this King holiday, we are on a mission to help people around the globe understand his true message and put it into action. In recent years, our social, political, and economic landscape has shown us the necessity of my father's philosophy and methodology of nonviolence. From political polarization, income and housing disparities, police brutality, extremism, racism, and war, his dream cannot be fully realized until we do the work to transform these unjust systems. You may be wondering how we can transform these systems. You must first realize that it starts with me, but you are not alone. There's a whole community of us dedicated to creating the beloved community where injustice ceases and love prevails.
Hello, my name is Zariah Jordan. Dr. King's daughter, Bernice King, shared the importance of us all working together to build communities that transform unjust systems. Let us all work together to create a world where hate ceases and love prevails.
Hello, my name is Amira Morla. Music played an important role in the civil rights movement. They were also known as freedom songs. They brought activities together as a community and were sung to inspire, provide hope, and motivation to overcome racial injustice. I'd like to introduce West Rock's Orchestra under the direction of Mr. Ullman.
Thank you. We Shall Overcome was a protest song used by Black laborers and union organizers. In the 1950s, it was taught to young activists, many of whom were still teenagers. They sang it to comfort themselves and to keep their spirits up, even as they were taken to jail for their activism. Over the next decade, many of those student activists became prominent in the civil rights movement, and We Shall Overcome became one of their defining songs. The words to We Shall Overcome were quoted by Martin Luther King Jr. in his finest sermon. He said, "We shall overcome, we shall overcome. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome. And I believe it because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." At Dr. King's funeral, 50,000 attendees joined in singing We Shall Overcome. It's remarkable that in the mid-20th century, decades before Spotify, decades before TikTok, We Shall Overcome spread by word of mouth to become the most recognizable anthem for the civil rights movement, and ultimately the struggle for civil rights throughout the world. We will play an orchestral version of We Shall Overcome. You will hear two verses with harmonies in the style of the church organ. This is We Shall Overcome.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman and the West Rocks Orchestra.
Now, a short video about Dr. King's message.
Dr. King embodied his resilience and encouraged by fighting injustice at all costs. Dr. King's actions and words recommended peaceful approaches to some of society's biggest problems. Just as students had opportunities to reflect on Dr. King's words, so too did our teachers.
Martin Luther King Jr. was a leader of the civil rights movement in America. As leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, he organized many peaceful protests.
This quote, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was trying to say that change does not come easy. We need to work for what's right and do what's right, and it might not always be the easiest thing to do, but sometimes we have to make that hard decision. And this quote still applies today because there's still so much change that we need to fight for and work for in our society.
So I chose the second quote, which states, "Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle." I take that to mean that change is not something that's going to happen automatically. Change is something that we have to work on. It's something that we have to strive for in order for it to happen.
Before there was the dream, there was the letter. On April 16, 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. led a peaceful movement in Birmingham, Alabama. The purpose of this demonstration was to bring awareness and an end to racial disparity in Birmingham. Dr. King was arrested and sent to jail for protesting segregation. He spent 8 days in jail.
While in jail, King wrote the famous letter from Birmingham Jail. Dr. King begins his letter by stating that he doesn't often respond to his critics. But since the 8 fellow clergymen who wrote the article against him are men of genuinely goodwill, he decided he needed to respond to their concerns.
To acknowledge the legacy of Dr. King, and specifically to understand Dr. King's vision for the civil rights movement, this week teachers and students took time to analyze King's letter from Birmingham Jail. Dr. King maintained a strong commitment to social justice and change through nonviolent protests, despite the threat of violence against himself and his family.
Throughout our presentation today, we would like to share a few video clips of students and teachers' reflections and thoughts pertaining to the letter from Birmingham Jail and Dr. King's work.
We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. When I read this quote, I think that the message to the country and to Dr. King's supporters must have been that they have to be persistent in this fight, and that, since they know that what they're standing up for is right, they just have to keep doing it, even if they might face some resistance along the way. And so when I think about what that means for our students, I think that means, if you know that what you're standing up for is right, then keep doing it, and stick to your guns, and eventually, you might find some success, but it's not just going to be handed to you easily.
Justice too long delayed is justice denied. I think that this quote is painfully true because sometimes when people are wronged and want justice, the people in power turn a blind eye. If you're waiting for a while just for someone to tell you that they'll do what you want later and they never do, they aren't doing it.
This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied. I think at the time that he wrote this, I think that this meant that a lot of the people at that time, when Black people spoke up about discrimination and things like that, they said oh, just wait and things would get better. But Dr. King, he said, well, by telling us to wait, you're basically just telling us oh, never, because justice isn't really something you should be waiting for or delaying.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. For me, that means that even the slightest unfair thing in one place can affect the whole world.
Bueno, me siento honrada de poder hablar con ustedes sobre el Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Es una persona a la que yo admiro muchísimo y quisiera compartir algunas palabras sobre la cita que dijo el Dr. Martin Luther King acerca de la injusticia. Que cuando existe injusticia en algún lugar del mundo, eso amenaza a la justicia en todo lugar, en todo el mundo. Y a veces nosotros pensamos que porque a nosotros no nos afecta lo que les está pasando a otros en otra parte del país, en otra parte del mundo, que eso nunca nos va a tocar. El problema es que la injusticia puede evolucionar, la injusticia se puede expandir, puede llegar a otros territorios. Y es nuestro deber, así como lo hizo el Dr. Martin Luther King, que fue nuestro ejemplo, ser luz y luchar por la igualdad, por la justicia para todos, para que podamos ser un ejemplo nosotros para aquellos lugares donde no existe y en lugar de evolucionar para el mal, evolucionemos para el bien.
I'd like to introduce the Restrock's chorus under the direction of Miss Golding.
The Restrock's chorus will be performing a piece called We Will Rise Up Together.
The song is about the power and importance of lifting each other up.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s message encourages us to rise up and lift one another up.
At Westrock, we rise and lift up one another through our positive interactions. Enjoy the performance.
To be Delayed is justice denied. What does this mean to you?
To me, this means that if we do not have justice right away, then it takes away the meaning of justice. Therefore, it is not justice if it is delayed.
En cualquier lugar donde exista la injusticia, hay una amenaza a la justicia en todo el mundo. ¿Qué significa eso para ti? Mauricio.
Para mí lo que decía en la carta significa que en cualquier lugar que haya injusticia va a haber una persona que va a protestar para que haya humildad e igualdad.
Que por ejemplo en otros países también hay problemas como el racismo y cosas así, entonces pues eso también, por decirlo así, evoluciona en otros términos.
We all know that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It has to be demanded by the oppressed. People being oppressed is being crushed or burdened by others who use their power and authority. And it was a major problem back then because people were using their power to insult and hurt others of different races and people who are different than them.
I agree with that. But I can also say that freedom isn't given to you. You have to earn it and sometimes fight for it. And we've known that because of past experiences.
Are you familiar with the letter from Birmingham Jail written by Dr. Martin Luther King?
I am.
Okay, so I'm going to recite a quote from that letter. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. What does that mean to you?
It means to me that if one person is a victim of injustice, that anyone can be, and that there's a reason that everybody should have equal rights.
I want you to just think about injustices anywhere, that part. When you just think and reflect back to your surroundings, your community, whether that be your community at home, your school community, your circle of friends community, just think about what injustices you have witnessed.
For me, it's when people are perceived to be better people than another person based on either previous actions or their perceived intelligence. I believe that everybody is equal.
Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Sophia, what does this mean to you?
This quote means to me that we're not just given whatever we want, it's that we have to take action for the things that we do want.
I'd like to introduce the West Rocks Jazz Band under the direction of Miss Jean.
Good morning, West Rocks. We're so honored to play for you today and to celebrate the hard work and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We're going to play a song made famous by Louis Armstrong. It's called What a Wonderful World. We really hope that the song's message of hope for peace and love and equality for all touches all of you. Thank you for a chance to play today. What a Wonderful World.
All right. Thank you, Jazz Band and Miss Jean. Amazing. Well, what a wonderful recognition and celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The performances, student engagement, and spirit were a perfect way to remember his life and work. He would have celebrated his 94th birthday this past Monday. The theme for our celebration, as you heard, came from his letter from the Birmingham Jail, which was a pivotal movement in the civil rights era. The letter called to action many who were content just to stand on the sidelines. The point of the letter was to address the criticism directed towards King's campaign and to point out that injustice is an acceptable reason for civil disobedience. The best way to learn from history is to see how our past struggles and triumphs continue to inform our present, and to use that knowledge as a call to action. I look forward to seeing the ways that the West Rocks community, students, staff, and families can impact the same movement against injustice that King fought for 60 years ago. Thank you, big thank you to all the students, teachers, and staff, and everyone else who contributed to today's celebration. Special thanks to Mrs. Walters and Mrs. Golding for their hard work in organizing this program. Also, thanks to Ms. Powell and Ms. Mulan for going above and beyond. With that, our program is ended. Let's go out and combat injustice. And as Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.